2025 is the year that I run sub 70 off the bike. Now, first of all, apologies for the hair. That's pretty horrific. I just got back from a ride with Matt Kamenar. It's meant to be 3 hours easy, but I didn't realise he was going to turn up with this TT bike, and I just got my legs ripped off. So that was fun. Right, so big plan for 2025 is run sub 70 off the bike. I've got close this year. I got to about I think 71 is my quickest, so about a minute off. I have run sub 70 before in a standalone half marathon, but that's obviously very different. I ran 68 minutes at Bath Half last year, so I feel like I'm capable. The reason why this is a big goal for me this year is because the level that guys are bringing to racing now is just getting better and better and better, and I truly believe that if you want to be really competitive, especially at the pointy end of races and at those big races, in 70.3, you need to be running close to or under 70 minutes off the bike. So that's why it's a really big focus for me this year, is to try and get my run as good as possible, and a sub 70 I'll be very happy with. And if I can consistently do that, I'd be extremely happy with that. Now, there are 3 things that I am focusing on to make sure I am going to become a better runner. And I want to share those with you in this video so you might be able to implement them into your training and become a better runner yourself. Focus number 1, and the first thing that I'm going to focus on to become a faster runner and run sub 70 off the bike consistently and amazingly every single race I do this year, fingers crossed, is get stronger on the bike. Now, you might be thinking, Harry, that has nothing to do with running, but if you get stronger on the bike, you will then be fresher for the run. I know that I can run sub 70 because I've done it before in a standalone half marathon. However, after a 1.9k swim and a 90k bike, you're in a bit of a deficit and so you're not as fresh. But if you go into that run as fresh as you possibly can be, then you give yourself the best chance possible. That's where getting stronger on the bike comes in, and obviously on the swim as well, because you're expending less energy, so you will be fresher at the start of the run to give yourself the best chance possible. So I will get stronger on the bike, and the more I focus on my bike strength, actually will help me in the run. Think of it like this. If you have 10 matches at the start of a race, you spend 2 of those matches in the swim, you have 8 matches left. Let's say you spend 6 of them on the bike. You only have 2 matches left for the run, which isn't many, and you're probably not going to run as quick as you possibly can. However, if you're stronger on the bike, so you can go the same speed but for less effort, let's say you still burn 2 matches in the swim, but you burn 4 matches on the bike instead of the 6, then you've got 4 matches to burn on the run. So you're then going to be in a far better position to burn more matches, go deeper, and just run faster. So essentially, that's the first thing that I'm going to focus on, and I think it should be a really big focus. If you want to become a faster runner off the bike, you actually need to focus on your bike so that you can go into the run feeling great, feeling fresh. Nice easy 50-minute jog off the bike on the plan today, and this leads me on to my next thing that I'm going to focus on to become a faster runner and get that elusive sub 70 off the bike. And it is just as simple as more volume, more mileage. So my focus is to just steadily increase my mileage and my volume and increase the amount that I can do. Ultimately, the more you do of something, the better you will become. There is a caveat with that, and it depends how much you can absorb, and there is a limit, and of course if you go over that limit, then you're very likely to get injured, ill, and if you just can't absorb it, you're not going to get any better. So it's finding that sweet spot. But in my training, what I found is when I've run a bit more, I've got a bit better. So that's ultimately what I'm going to focus on. Doing a bit more mileage,
doing a bit more running. That should simply help me become a better runner. Now, I'm not just going to suddenly jump to high volume, and I don't know if I'll ever be someone who is, you know, really high volume runner. Like, there's guys that are running 100k plus a week, and I've never got to that level. I think the most I've ever done is mid 80s, 85k a week. But we're just going to test some things and, you know, bump it up a little bit and see how the body responds.
The last thing that I'm going to focus on to make sure that I can run sub 70 off the bike is more specificity. Now, what I mean by that is a very broad term. What I mean by that is more time at goal pace, which sounds very like a very obvious thing to do. I do a lot of running with the local run club, which is amazing. We do 2 sessions a week around the track. And in the summer, one of those sessions will be on the field. But those are like above race pace. And I think last year I didn't do too much like at specific race pace. I did a fair bit, but not like as much as I think I maybe should have done. So in chatting with my coach, I think we're going to implement more specific running at that like sub threshold effort, maybe race pace or slightly slower than race pace, but doing longer duration efforts and multiple efforts at that pace. And for example, implementing that into like a long run. And so you're working on, like I've mentioned, fatigue resistance, which I think is really important. And that's what's going to really help me become a better runner, is not focusing on the first 10K. It's the last 10K. And if anything, the last 5K is really, really important to be super strong in that final 5K. And so all these things that I'm talking about in this video are to make sure that I get to that final 5K as fresh as I possibly can, so I can keep running at either the same pace or even pick up the pace. That would be perfect. And so an example of maybe a session we might be doing is implementing race-specific intervals during a long run. So I love my Sunday long run. I think it's really important. It's become like a staple in my training. Where we do a lot of like trail running, which isn't super quick, but it gets you really strong, and I absolutely love that. However, I don't want to lose that, but I will be implementing more longer runs with specific race pace intervals. So for example, like a longer warm up, like an hour easy jog, and then doing like maybe 45 minutes to an hour's worth of that kind of just sub threshold work, and then maybe like a half an hour jog cool down to make it 2.5 hours. Something like that is potentially something that, well, it's something that I'm going to be focusing on. And so those 3 things that I've mentioned, you know, the bike focus for number 1, mileage focus for number 2, and then the kind of race specific pace and fatigue resistance, implementing that into the training for number 3. And fingers crossed, all of those combined will lead me to have a really successful run off the bike season. I think I had a really good year last year running off the bike. I showed that I've got good legs for it. However, there's so much more there, and I honestly, I'm confident in my ability to run sub 70. I've done it in its own entity as a half marathon, and I know that doesn't mean anything really, but the potential is there. So I just need to get myself in the place to be able to do it off the bike. Completely different ball game, but I'm excited for the challenge. And like I said, I think the way the sport is going, you need to be knocking on the door of 70 off the bike in the men's field, if not sub 70, if you want to be really competitive with the top guys in the top races. And so that's what needs to happen, and we're going to get it done.